there are a lot of challenges in the world with the prosthetic knees that are available. There's not been a huge amount of innovation, both in the most well supported and resourced areas, but especially in the most challenging areas. We've really not seen a lot of innovation, and that's leaving children with devices that aren't supporting their growth, aren't supporting healthy movement patterns, and are just making it really challenging to get on with life and get back to education, play, and just being a child.
My guest this week is Caitlin Edgar. Caitlin has a master's degree in biomedical engineering from Imperial College London, and currently she is a PhD researcher in paediatric prosthetic limb provision, also at Imperial College London. Caitlin, welcome to STEM with Mr. N.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now, I've obviously had the privilege of hearing you give a keynote speech, so I know a bit about your story, so I'm really honoured that you're coming on to share that with us. But can we just start off with that degree that I mentioned in biomedical engineering? What is biomedical engineering?
Sure, yeah. So I think the brilliant part of biomedical engineering is it's quite broad. It focuses mostly on human challenges, so whether that be healthcare challenges or technology in order to improve people's quality of life, kind of anything to do with what either goes on within hospitals, all the equipment there, or anything such as assistive technology, such as I work on prosthetic limbs, and we focus on all of the engineering behind all of those systems. So it's a real mixture of physics, chemistry, biology, maths, everything in one, but focusing on improving human life.
And that's one of the reasons why I actually wanted you to come on, is I know that the work that you're doing in your research brings in all sorts of different STEM skills and linking to different parts, which we are going to come to. But just before we come to that, so I'd said you're a PhD researcher. For anyone that's unaware, could you explain a wee bit about what a PhD is?
Sure, yeah. I think in overall, each PhD is unique, but the main concept of it is that you spend a dedicated amount of time researching into a novel area. So that's a area of, for instance, my biomedical engineering that has never been tackled before in such in depth. So we focus on about 3.5 years of research in order to produce new knowledge, new technology for the field. And in doing so, we also complete some exams and get a qualification. So I am actually still a student, but yeah, it's much more hands-on than particular coursework or anything like that.
And I'd obviously mentioned that your PhD research is in paediatric prosthetic limb provision. So can you tell us, like you did in that amazing speech I heard you give, could you tell us a bit about your PhD and your research and what it all involves?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, prosthetic limbs. What we're talking about is prosthetics that we would use to replace parts of the body that have either been lost or had to be removed due to illness. And so I specifically focus on lower limb prosthetics to help replace potentially parts of the lower leg or up into the knee that have been removed. And I specifically focus on children and children that live in challenging circumstances such as conflict zones or humanitarian disasters. But as a whole, paediatric prosthetic provision is about improving the design and delivery of prosthetic devices for children globally. And my work specifically focuses on the knee joint. So if you have lost or do not have your leg all the way up to above the knee joint, then you're going to need a prosthetic knee to replace that. And so there are a lot of challenges in the world with the prosthetic knees that are available. There's not been a huge amount of innovation, both in the most well supported and resourced areas, but especially in the most challenging areas. We've really not seen a lot of innovation, and that's leaving children with devices that aren't supporting their growth, aren't supporting healthy movement patterns, and are just making it really challenging to get on with life and get back to education, play, and just being a child. So my job as a biomedical engineer, as part of this PhD, is to improve the design of prosthetic knee joints for children in challenging environments.
And there's quite a lot in there in that answer. So
Yeah.
there's wee bits I'm now going to unpick. So obviously prosthetic limbs that have been around for a long time, from the typical wooden leg on a pirate through to the limbs just now. But you'd said there's not been a lot of advancement um, in the lower limbs, particularly the knee joint, in quite some time. So what advancements are going on just now with your research that are improving the knee joint and the lower limb prosthetics?
Yeah, so I guess I'd caveat that first with saying there are a lot of advancements in adult prosthetics, and we've seen amazing boost after the Paralympic movement. And so we are seeing a lot of high technology advancements, but a lot of the challenges with children is that they're very small. And so we need very lightweight, durable, and simple solutions that really support them to just be active. And so what we've not seen is innovation specifically for children. So the focus of my knee joint is to provide a knee joint that is more stable, one that allows for variable walking speed, one that supports height increase and growth, and is small enough to fit even the smallest child. So those are kind of like some of the key concepts. And what we've also got to consider is that it has to be affordable. So when we're talking about challenging environments, we've got to achieve all of these engineering solutions at a very, very low cost. And that doesn't mean low quality. It has to be high quality at a low cost. So those are kind of like the innovations that we're trying to achieve. And to do so, we've done a lot of different research in different countries, working with children, their parents, and their clinicians, which we call prosthetists. And we've done lots of questionnaires and work with them to find out exactly what they need. So all of this innovation that I'm working on is driven by evidence, which has been called for by the child, their family, and their clinician. And we've done that work in Cambodia and in the UK, which has been fantastic. It's been a real highlight. So I'm confident that we're listening to children. I'm confident that we have a starting place, but there's a lot of engineering left to do, not just on the knee joint, but the whole leg. So we need more people.
I think that's incredible, obviously, working with these people in the lower income countries. And you've said there about speaking to children and parents who you know that you're doing the right thing for their needs. So what then is your process of designing a new knee joint? What does that involve?
Yeah, it's a really iterative process. We really it's not really a start line and a direct finish line. So we go and listen. We listen to all the kind of key stakeholders. We bring that back and we translate that into something called user needs. So we define, for instance, the child might say, I feel really unstable. So stability becomes a user need. But then we need to break that user need down into something actionable, something that you can design towards. So we break it down into ensuring that the heel is in the correct position when you take a step, ensuring that the knee remains straight all the way through to the end of your step. So we break that down into really key points, and then we can begin to design and innovate on that. So then we would go to concepts and drawings, and then we really lucky that we have at Imperial a great set of 3D printers. So we get to really iterate through designs and see them in the physical form really quickly, which is so beneficial. So yeah, 3D modeling on the computers, 3D printing, and then we take those designs back to those users. We get more feedback. So we say, we listened, this is what we've come up with. Is it any good? Do you like it? And then once we get that feedback, we proceed towards safety testing. So obviously a big part of ensuring that something is appropriate to use is that you meet international standards of safety testing. So then we would go through the process of making sure it's strong enough and durable enough for use, with lots of big testing machines for that. And then finally, we do a proper trial where we get children to wear the knee joint and try it out. So that's where we're at the moment, is that we've had children in the UK try out this new knee joint, which has been a real dream come true. And it's been fantastic because obviously children are very honest. They tell you exactly what they want. So we have improvements to make. But they also said that they liked parts. So that's really positive. And then we'll go back again, make improvements, and keep going until we're at a point of delivery.
That's great that it's reaching that point where, you know, children are happy with it. And obviously nothing's ever perfect, especially if you're not at the forefront of pushing forward these designs. And it sounds
Mhm.
like there's quite a variety of tasks that are actually involved in designing this knee joint. So, and I know there might not be a typical day for you, but that's how I'm going to phrase the question is
Yeah.
what is a typical day like for you doing this PhD research?
Yeah, you're right. It really does vary with different stages of the project. It can be anything from doing a data collection in the morning. So we would do interviews, and so I'd go and meet families with limb loss and have discussions and ask different questions and do games in order to find out what they would want. That was what I did earlier in the PhD. Then I would maybe come back, do some data analysis, do some design, put a 3D print on, write ethics. A lot of our research obviously has to go through ethics. That's a big part of everything we do. So it's a whole mixture. But as we've moved towards the end, and I'm towards the end of my PhD now, a kind of more typical day is having a family come in to try the knee joint, which is a brilliant day, and that just really involves the family having a lot of fun, and also in the same ethos that you have here, trying to inspire children to get into STEM. So we have full education on why and how we've tried to design it as well. It's not just about us gaining something from them in the research process. It's about them gaining something from us and learning as well and being inspired. So yeah, a whole mixture. So I'm sorry, there isn't a typical day, but that's a range of days.
No, that's great. And I know you were at the end there saying, it's not just about us getting something, but I think everything that's come through in all of your answers is about how child focused and user focused what you're doing is. Um, are there, obviously, it's working with people in poorer countries and you've got children in the UK testing it as well. So are the team that you're involved in at Imperial College, are you working with other stakeholders in other countries on this research as well, or is it ICL that are doing this in isolation?
Yeah, that's such a good point, and you really hit the nail on the head. We can't work in isolation, and all our work is um, completely driven by local innovators and local research teams. So we collaborate with this amazing School of Prosthetics and Orthotics in Cambodia. We did have collaborations in Gaza before the recent conflict escalation in Lebanon, in Rwanda. So that's kind of like not all of those that I work with personally, but our research group, we don't work in isolation. And all our work is very much driven from conversations that we have with our local stakeholders that tell us about the most pressing issues. And then we try and help from our experience and use what expertise and technologies that we have available here, but very much to answer questions and problems that are raised by those there. And that's again why, as well, in that design process, we're always taking back that design to the people that have talked to us about it because they're the ones that know best. I will never be an expert. One, because I'm fortunate that I have both limbs, and two, I don't live in a challenging environment. I'm very privileged. So I won't ever be the expert. I can merely just try and use my tool set to help those that really do understand it better.
And that whole design process that we were speaking about earlier as well. So obviously you've got these stakeholders in other countries that are involved, but within the team at ICL, when you've got such a variety of things from data collecting to 3D designing and printing, as a biomechanical engineer, are you responsible for doing all of these different elements, or are there some people in the team who like 3D printing is their specialism and you hand things off to them?
So I would say that in terms of the pediatric prosthetic knee joint, it is down to me to manage kind of all aspects. But having said that, I have a lot of members of the team that are, as you say, much better experts in 3D printing or 3D design. And so I never work in isolation. And so the ideas that we have are kind of collective. The methods that we use are brainstormed together. I very much rely on all of my team, and especially one of my fellow PhD students, Claudia. She is absolutely, we're like a duo. We do this together. But I think within research, there is still that person who's kind of they drive the project forward, but I wouldn't say that there's any research project that is purely solo. So you're very much right. It's a team effort. And I'm not the expert in all of those aspects at all.
No, there is quite a variety of aspects and quite a few different STEM skills involved.
Mm.
And this is where I'm actually going to link back to find out about how you eventually got into all this. So where did your interest in STEM come from?
So I'd say like my interest in kind of pure STEM was one from amazing teachers at school, but two also my family have been very active members of the STEM community and have worked in the STEM community. And so I feel like it's always been a big part of my life. But having said that, I think there's like specific moments and specific people that inspire you to get into various aspects. And also, my grandparents kind of encouraged me to really read really widely. And I read a lot of kind of like different types of topic areas and ended up reading this book by Emily Mayhew. And she is a historian, but she is the only kind of resident historian within an engineering department in the UK. So it's this fascinating combination of storytelling and science, and it was just so inspirational. And I read her book about what was going on in the biomedical engineering department at Imperial, and I just was completely sold because it was that bridging of human nature, extreme kind of physical function, medical device technology, as you say, bringing all those STEM aspects together. So that's what really triggered me to go to Imperial. But I would say originally it was my family and the environment that I grew up in.
And you've said there about why you ended up going into the biomedical engineering side of things, but what then led from you going with that degree to focusing on prosthetic limbs for children?
Mm. Yeah, so I guess I was really fortunate that I got some different research opportunities while I was doing my undergrad. And this kind of would come back to my biggest advice for young people, because the way I got into it was I basically contacted one of my heroes who worked in the department at that time. And he was doing this research on limb loss for adults. And so I did a research placement within the research group that I now work in. And I did a summer placement working with them. And then I did my master's project in that group, and then I've stayed. So it was that kind of original email sending and just kind of contacting that person that you think will never respond to you, and just putting yourself out there, that kind of got me the opportunity that has led to everything here. So I think as well, that's my biggest piece of advice is just send the email, just do it, because more often than not, every single person that's a couple more years further down the line than you just wants to turn back round and ensure that the next generation is following.
And can we give that person a shout out by name that it was that
Yeah,
you contacted?
it was Dave Henson. So he was a Paralympian, and then he was also at the same time doing his PhD at Imperial. So he was kind of, multitasking to the extreme, I would say. So yeah.
And I think that's also great advice about that, just send an email, and also about how people just want to help other people.
Mm.
And I'd read a great line in a book recently, which has absolutely nothing to do with STEM or anything, but it happened to say that a candle does not get diminished by lighting another candle,
Hmm.
which I thought was a great way of discussing exactly what you've just said about people wanting to help other people. Once
Hmm.
you've achieved something, it doesn't diminish your achievements by helping someone else.
Yeah,
So I completely agree with your sentiment there of just send the email and you never know what will
you
happen.
never know. Exactly. And I think as well, it's something that we see when you work in kind of areas where you're crossing different fields of STEM, whether that be biomedical engineering that encompasses everything. You need people from lots of different, whether that be educational background, whether that be humanities, STEM. Everyone has a role to play in every single project. And so that's why I think never feel like you can't contribute to a project that you're passionate about, because we need everyone. and every different opinion and point of view in order to really further really challenging engineering problems.
And part of involving everyone is also including all people of different genders, which I know has been a
Mm.
big focus within STEM. Now, I know typically in the biological sciences, women are very well represented, and in engineering, women tend to not to be very well represented. What's it like within biomedical engineering, which is obviously the coming together of both of these?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think within the kind of undergraduate courses that I did, and all the way back from school, I think I've grown up more in a generation of women, thankfully being more involved in STEM, and then subsequently bioengineering at Imperial, and my research group is very diverse. So I think it is probably compared to other engineering fields, potentially a greater representation of women. And I haven't particularly had any challenges myself, and I feel that yeah, I've been well supported throughout all of those aspects. So I don't know. Yeah, I feel um, there's definitely more to be done, and I think especially when we want to continue to inspire women to move into areas that they've not been highly represented before, it's really, really important. But I think that starts probably well before you get to the point of doing an engineering degree. I think that starts from a very young age and building that confidence and showing the opportunities from a very young age. And I was very fortunate that, I had amazing female role models within my family. My mum is my rock, and so she has been an amazing role model for me. So yeah, I don't know. I probably can't comment hugely on it, but um, it's probably a better representation.
Yeah, and it's obviously, as you said, you can't comment hugely on it, and I'm not in that field at all. But the fact that you've not noticed any particular issue shows that there's definitely something positive there, even if it's not fully equal. Obviously,
Mm.
you can only comment on your own experiences, but it's great that you've not felt in any way held back about it at all.
Yeah, no, I've never felt held back for that reason per se, and also as well. But I think again that comes back to I've never, from a point of privilege, I've never considered that as well because I've had such strong female role models that there's always been that if you want to do it, you do it and you get it, you go out there and you push yourself and you do it. So I think that also means that yeah, so I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean because that then instills in you that same drive that there are no barriers to what you want to
Yeah.
achieve. You go out and you go for it, and that's also why I appreciate you coming on to do this so that other people out there can hear from you and maybe have you as a role model for pursuing that biomedical engineering side of things. So we're almost out of time, but I want to finish on a lighter note because this was something that I really enjoyed in your talk was hearing about prosthetics that are not for humans. Uh,
Yeah.
so I'm sure saying that you'll know exactly the story from your talk that I'm referring to. Would you mind sharing about this
Yeah.
non-human prosthetic with everyone?
Yeah, I think, and it very much epitomizes the whole concept of growth in pediatric prosthetics as well. So we work, as I said, with this amazing team in Cambodia, and they have also taken on the role of providing a prosthetic leg to an elephant that lost part of their leg when they were really young. So what started as quite a small prosthetic that they could kind of easily provide, they're now having to update that prosthetic every 6 months or even more often than that with a larger and larger and larger prosthetic, which I think is taking a lot more material than what would be required for a child or an adult's leg. So yeah, that was a lovely visit in Cambodia to go and see Chuk the elephant, who is being supported by the Cambodian School of Prosthetics and Orthotics. And hopefully he'll stop growing very soon, and then they'll be able to just maybe provide one a year when it breaks. But that also highlights the durability challenge. There's a lot of weight going through that plastic leg.
Yeah, and carrying that leg's not going to be a one-man job, certainly.
that's the thing. The people looking after the elephant, when they have to take it off and clean his residual limb and clean the socket and everything, it's really it's backbreaking work to have to look after him.